The red dust of Draconus Prime swirled around Alex Reed's boots as he walked through the market square. 3 weeks had passed since the human diplomatic team landed on this strange world, and everything about the Dragon Society still felt wrong to him. The air smelled of sulfur and fear, a combination that made his stomach turn every morning. Alex stopped at a fruit vendor's stall and watched a young dragon child being scolded by its parent. The child had pointed at a female dragon carrying heavy stones across the square and asked why she looked so sad. The parent quickly silenced the child with a sharp claw to the snout. The female dragon never looked up, never showed any reaction to the conversation about her. She just kept walking, her scales dull and scratched from years of hard labor. "First time seeing the breeding district?" asked Dr. Maya Patel, Alex's second-in-command, as she joined him at the stall. She had been studying the local customs for their diplomatic mission, trying to understand how humans could work with this civilization. Alex nodded and bought 2 pieces of local fruit that tasted like bitter apples. "Every time I think I understand this place, something new shocks me." They walked toward the center of the city, where massive stone towers reached into the cloudy sky. The architecture was impressive, built by dragon claws and fire over thousands of years. But between the beautiful buildings, Alex saw the ugly truth of this society. Male dragons soared overhead, their scales bright and well-maintained. Female dragons walked on the ground, their wings bound with metal chains, their necks marked with identification brands. The sound of crying made Alex turn toward a large, circular building. Through the open doors, he could see rows of dragon eggs sitting on heated stones. Dragon keepers moved between the rows, checking each egg with careful attention. When an egg began to crack, they would lean close and watch. "What happens when they hatch?" Alex asked a passing dragon merchant. The dragon looked surprised that a human would care. "If male, celebration. If female, decision time. Decision time? Keep. For breeding later, or remove the problem early." The dragon said this as casually as discussing the weather. Alex felt his jaw clench. Maya grabbed his arm, feeling the tension in his muscles. They had been warned about interfering with local customs, but some customs deserved interference. They continued walking until they reached the grand breeding arena, where a crowd had gathered. Alex pushed through the mass of dragons until he could see what was happening in the center. An old female dragon sat chained to a metal post. Her scales were once magnificent gold, but now they appeared faded and covered in scars. One of her wings hung at an odd angle, clearly broken and healed wrong many times. 3 young dragons, barely adults, stood around her in a circle. Each held a different tool of punishment. One carried a branding iron still glowing from the forge. Another held a vial of acid that would burn away scales. The third carried metal shears designed to clip wings down to nothing. "Ember the Cursed," announced a massive red dragon wearing golden chains of office. "You have brought shame to our people for the last time. In 40 years of breeding, you have produced 37 eggs. Of those eggs, 35 hatched female. Only 2 males emerged from your worthless body." The crowd of dragons around the arena hissed their disapproval. Some threw small stones at the chained dragon. She absorbed each impact without making a sound. "Your punishment will serve as a lesson," the official continued. "Your fire glands will be poisoned so you can never breathe flame again. Your wings will be cut so you can never fly again. Your scales will be burned with the mark of the failure, so all will know your shame. Then you will work in the crystal mines until your death." Alex watched the old dragon's eyes as the official spoke. There was no fear in them, only a deep sadness. That seemed older than the mountains around them. She had accepted her fate completely, as if she believed she deserved this punishment. The first young dragon stepped forward with the branding iron. The crowd cheered as he raised it toward Ember's face. The heat from the metal made the air shimmer. "Stop!" The word came from Alex's mouth before he realized he was speaking. The entire arena fell silent. Hundreds of dragon eyes turned toward him. The young dragon holding the branding iron paused, confused by the interruption. "What did you say, human?" asked the red dragon official, his voice carrying disbelief and amusement. Alex stepped into the arena, his small human form dwarfed by the dragons around him. Maya hissed his name behind him, begging him to step back. But Alex kept walking until he stood directly in front of the chained dragon. Up close, he could see intelligence in her ancient eyes, intelligence that had been ignored and punished for decades. "I said stop." Alex's voice carried clearly across the silent arena. "You will not harm her." The crowd exploded into laughter. Dragons slapped their tails against the ground and roared with amusement. The idea of a tiny human challenging their authority was the funniest thing they had heard in years. The official dragon landed heavily in front of Alex, bringing his massive head down to eye level. His breath smelled like rotting meat and sulfur. "Little human, you do not understand our ways. This creature has failed in her purpose. She produces only worthless females. She must be punished." "No." Alex looked directly into the dragon's eyes without flinching. "You come with me," he said to Ember, turning his back on the official. The arena fell silent again. This time, the silence felt dangerous. Alex could hear his own heartbeat and Maya's quick breathing behind him. The official dragon's claws scraped against stone as he circled Alex like a predator. "You dare challenge our law, human?" Alex finally turned around. His hand rested on the small plasma weapon at his hip, though he knew it would be useless against a dragon. But sometimes the threat mattered more than the reality. "I challenge any law that punishes someone for circumstances beyond their control." The morning sun cast long shadows across the stone plaza as Alex faced the assembled Dragon Council. Word of yesterday's confrontation had spread through the city like wildfire, and now the most powerful dragons on Draconus Prime sat before him, on carved stone thrones. High Drakelord Scorius, whose scales shimmered like black metal, leaned forward with obvious curiosity. "So the little human thinks he can lecture us about justice," Scorius said, his voice echoing off the surrounding buildings. "Tell me, soft one, what gives your species the right to question traditions that have served us for 3,000 years? Alex stood alone in the center of the plaza. The Dragon Council had forbidden Maya and the rest of his team from joining. Him, claiming this was a matter between him and Dragon Law. Behind the council, hundreds of dragons filled the terraced seating areas, all eager to watch this unusual entertainment. "Tradition isn't the same as truth," Alex replied. "Your society is failing because you waste half your population's potential." The dragons around the plaza rumbled with laughter. Counselor Brass, a female dragon whose scales looked worn and dull compared to the males around her, shifted uncomfortably in her seat. Alex noticed she was the only female on the council, and her throne sat noticeably lower than the others. "Failing?" Scorius spread his wings wide, showing off their impressive span. "Look around you, human. See our great city, our mighty towers. We rule this entire world. How does this look like failure to you?" Alex pulled out a small data pad from his pocket and read from it. "Your population has dropped by 60% in the last 500 years. Your technology hasn't advanced in over a century. Your mining operations are producing less each year because you're using outdated methods. Your birth rate is collapsing because you keep killing female dragons." He looked up from the pad. "Should I continue?" The laughter died away. Several council members exchanged worried glances. Scorius's claws scraped against his throne's armrests. "Where did you get those numbers?" demanded Counselor Gold, a heavy-set dragon whose belly scraped the ground when he moved. "From your own archives. It took my team 3 days to translate your historical records. Everything is documented, you just choose to ignore it." Alex tucked the data pad away. "Your ancestors wrote about something called the Great Sundering. Want to know what caused it?" The plaza fell completely silent. Even the wind seemed to stop blowing. The Great Sundering was a taboo subject in dragon society, something whispered about but never discussed openly. Counselor Brass spoke for the first time, her voice barely audible. The Great Sundering was caused by foreign invasion. Everyone knows this? No, Alex said gently. It was caused by your own choices. 500 years before the Sundering, your people began systematically devaluing females. They stopped allowing females to participate in government, science, and exploration. They treated females as breeding stock instead of equal partners. He gestured toward Ember, who sat chained at the edge of the plaza under heavy guard. Dragons like her were once advisors to kings, explorers who mapped distant stars, inventors who created the technology you still use today. But you decided they were worthless because they couldn't produce male offspring on command. Scorius rose from his throne, his massive form blocking out the sun. Even if that were true, which I doubt, what concern is it of yours? You came here for a trade agreement, not to restructure our society. Because we won't trade with a civilization that wastes its most valuable resource. Alex's voice grew stronger. Humanity has learned that our greatest achievements come when everyone contributes their unique abilities. Your females have skills you've forgotten existed. Such as? Challenged Gold. Alex smiled. This was the moment he had been preparing for. Ember, tell them about mineral sensing. The old dragon looked up in surprise. No one had asked her a direct question in decades. I can feel the metal veins deep in the rock. The good stones sing differently than the empty ones. And weather prediction? Ember's voice grew slightly stronger. The air currents tell stories 3 days before the storms come. The pressure changes, the wind patterns shift. It's like reading a book written in the sky. Genetic memory? Every dragon carries the memories of their mothers and their mothers before them. Females remember back 20 generations or more. We know the old songs, the old ways, the old technologies that were lost. Ember looked directly at the council for the first time. We remember when dragons worked together instead of wasting time on competitions. The council members shifted uncomfortably. Several younger dragons in the audience leaned forward with obvious interest. This was information they had never heard before. Scorius slammed his tail against the stone floor. Enough! Even if females possess these supposed abilities, males are still superior warriors. Physical strength determines leadership. Then let's test that theory, Alex said calmly. What do you propose? A challenge, not just between individuals, but between philosophies. Give me permission to work with Ember and any other dragons who volunteer. Give us 1 month to prove that cooperation achieves more than domination. And if you fail? Alex took a deep breath. If we fail, you can do whatever you want with Ember, and my team will leave Draonus Prime forever. We'll tell the Human Federation that this world isn't ready for partnership. And if you succeed, you free all enslaved female dragons and give them equal rights in your society. The council erupted into angry roars and heated discussions. The idea of changing thousands of years of tradition based on a human's challenge seemed absurd to most of them. But Alex noticed that some dragons, particularly the younger ones in the audience, watched him with growing excitement. Counselor Brass leaned toward Scorius and whispered something in his ear. The High Drake Lord listened, then smiled in a way that made Alex nervous. Very well, human. We accept your challenge, but we choose the contest. Scorius's grin showed rows of razor-sharp teeth. You have 1 month to solve the crystal mine crisis. Several dragons gasped. Alex felt his confidence waver as he saw the reactions around him. The crystal mine crisis? He asked. Our main crystal mine, the one that powers half our city, collapsed 3 months ago. Our best engineers and strongest workers have failed to reopen it. If your cooperation philosophy is so superior, prove it by doing what our traditional methods cannot. Scorius spread his wings again. solve an impossible problem, human, or admit that strength and dominance are the only truths that matter. Alex looked at Ember, who stared back at him with something he hadn't seen before in her eyes. Hope. Around the plaza, he could see other dragons watching him with curiosity instead of mockery. He had asked for a challenge, and now he had one that could change everything or destroy any chance of helping these people. Deal, he said, extending his hand toward Scorius. The dragon reached out with one massive claw and carefully shook Alex's hand without crushing it. 1 month, human. Fail and tradition wins forever. Deep beneath the city, in tunnels carved from living rock, Alex followed a young dragon named Tom through winding passages that led to the crystal mines. Tom's green scales caught the light from the glowing crystals embedded in the tunnel walls, creating shifting patterns that reminded Alex of underwater scenes. "Are you sure about this?" Tom whispered as they walked. "If the guards catch us bringing you down here, they'll throw us both in the punishment cells." "The council gave me permission to investigate," Alex replied, though he knew Tom had good reason to worry. High Drake Lord Scorius had agreed to the challenge, but many dragons still viewed Alex's presence as an insult to their traditions. They reached a massive chamber where dozens of female dragons worked with pickaxes and hauling carts. The air was thick with dust, and the sound of metal striking rock echoed endlessly. Alex watched the workers and noticed something the male overseers seemed to miss. The female dragons weren't just randomly attacking the rock face. They paused frequently, pressing their ears against the stone, listening for something. "Tom, ask one of them what she's listening for." The young dragon looked nervous but approached a middle-aged female whose scales had turned gray from years of dust exposure. After a brief conversation, he returned to Alex. "She says the good crystal veins make a different sound when you tap them. Like music," she said. "The empty rock sounds dead, but the crystal-rich areas ring like bells." Alex felt excitement building in his chest. "That's mineral sensing. Ember mentioned it during the council meeting." They continued deeper into the mine until they reached the collapse site. A wall of broken rock and twisted metal blocked what had once been the main tunnel to the richest crystal deposits. Warning signs in dragon script covered the area, and scattered tools showed where previous rescue attempts had failed. "How many dragons were trapped when this happened?" Alex asked. 15, Tom said quietly. "All female. They were working the deep veins when the supports gave way." Alex studied the collapse pattern. His engineering background from years of space station construction told him this wasn't a natural cave-in. "Tom, this looks like the supports were deliberately weakened. Who was in charge of mine safety?" "Councilor Gold oversees all mining operations, but he relies on Foreman Granite for daily management." "The same Granite who beats workers for taking rest breaks?" Tom nodded. "He believes hard discipline produces better results." Alex pulled out a small scanner from his equipment pack and ran it over the collapsed area. The readings made him frown. These support beams were cut, not broken by pressure. Someone wanted this tunnel to collapse. "That's impossible," Tom protested. "Why would anyone deliberately trap workers?" "Maybe to hide something, or to blame the collapse on female incompetence." Alex looked at the young dragon carefully. "Tom, how well do you know the females who work down here?" "Better than I should, according to my father. He says I spend too much time talking to them instead of ordering them around." "Good. I need you to introduce me to the ones who knew this tunnel best." Over the next hour, Tom brought several female dragons to speak with Alex. Each conversation revealed more pieces of a disturbing puzzle. The trapped workers had been the mine's most experienced crystal hunters, dragons who could locate rich veins with almost supernatural accuracy. They had been exploring a new section of the deep tunnels, following crystal formations that promised to be the richest discovery in generations. "The day before the collapse," said an old female named Cole, "those workers were excited about something they'd found. They kept whispering about it but wouldn't tell anyone what it was. Alex studied his scanner readings again. Cole, can you sense anything unusual about this collapse site? The female dragon pressed her claws against the rubble and closed her eyes. After several long minutes, she opened them with a surprised expression. There are crystals beyond this wall. Not just normal crystals. Something bigger, something that hums with power. And she paused, looking frightened. Something else, metal that doesn't belong in natural rock. What kind of metal? Old metal. Ancient metal. Like the stories my grandmother told about the time before the Great Sundering, when dragons built flying cities and traveled between stars. Alex felt his heart race. If the trapped workers had discovered ancient dragon technology, that would explain why someone wanted them silenced. It would also explain why traditional digging methods had failed to clear the collapse. The saboteurs would have made sure their work couldn't be easily undone. I need to speak with Ember, Alex said. Tonight, after the guards changed shifts, getting into the prison compound required Tom's help and a carefully planned distraction. While Tom created a minor emergency in the guards' quarters involving a accidentally overturned food cart, Alex slipped into the cell block where Ember was being held. He found her lying on cold stone, her chains barely long enough to allow her to stand. But her eyes were alert when she saw him approach. "Human," she said softly, "you should not be here. Neither should you." Alex sat cross-legged outside her cell. "Ember, I need your help. The crystal mine collapse wasn't an accident," he explained. What he had discovered, including Cole's description of ancient metal hidden beyond the collapse site. As he spoke, Ember's expression changed from resignation to growing excitement. "The deep tunnels," she whispered. "I helped dig those tunnels 60 years ago, before females were banned from skilled work. There were rumors then about old ruins, buried deep in the rock. What kind of ruins? From the Golden Age before the Great Sundering, dragons once had technology that could shape stone with thought, that could make metal as light as air but stronger than diamond. When the Sundering came, most of that knowledge was lost." Ember shifted as much as her chains allowed, moving closer to the cell bars. But some dragons hid caches of the old technology, hoping future generations would be wise enough to use it properly. "Do you think that's what the trapped workers found?" "Yes. And I think I know who doesn't want it discovered." Ember's voice carried decades of suppressed anger. "Counselor Gold has built his power on controlling the crystal trade. If ancient technology was rediscovered, especially by females, it would destroy his authority." Alex leaned forward. "Ember, there's something else I need to tell you. During my research, I found references to a dragon named Luna. The records suggest she was your daughter." Ember's eyes filled with tears. "Luna, my beautiful daughter. She escaped during a transport to the breeding farms 15 years ago. I heard rumors that she fled to the outer planets, but I never knew if she survived." She survived. "My ship's communications picked up signals from a hidden colony on the 4th moon. The signals included her name and yours." For the first time since Alex had met her, Ember smiled. "Luna always was clever. If she built a colony, she would have gathered other escaped females. They would have had to develop technology to survive." "Technology that could help us clear the collapse and rescue the trapped workers?" "More than that," Ember said, her voice growing stronger. "Luna and her people could help rebuild dragon civilization the way it was meant to be. But first, we need to get word to her." Alex stood up. "Leave that to me. Tom knows a communication technician who owes him a favor. We can send a signal tonight. And if Luna comes back, then we'll show this world what dragons can really accomplish when they work together." As Alex prepared to leave, Ember called out softly, "Human, why are you doing this? Your people could easily trade with the council as they are. Why risk everything to change our society?" Alex paused at the cell door. "Because strength without wisdom leads to ruin. Your people are strong, but you've forgotten how to be wise." Humans learned long ago that our greatest achievements come when everyone contributes their unique gifts. Maybe it's time dragons remembered that lesson too. 3 weeks into the challenge, Alex stood at the edge of the crystal mine collapse site watching something that shouldn't have been possible. Female dragons worked alongside his human engineering team, their combined efforts achieving more progress in days than traditional methods had managed in months. But the sound of approaching wings made everyone freeze. High Drake Lord Scorius landed heavily at the mine entrance, followed by Counselor Gold and a squad of armed guards. The delegations. Timing wasn't coincidental. Alex had expected them to interfere once his unconventional methods started showing real results. "Enough of this charade," Scorius announced, his voice echoing through the tunnels. "The month isn't finished, but we've seen enough. Your cooperation experiment ends now." "The agreement was for 1 month," Alex replied calmly, though his hand moved instinctively toward his communicator. "We still have 1 week remaining." Gold stepped forward, his massive bulk blocking much of the tunnel entrance. "The agreement is void. You've been communicating with enemies of the state." Alex felt his stomach drop. Somehow they had discovered his contact with Luna's colony. "I've been working to solve your crisis just as promised. By consorting with exiles and criminals," Scorius said. "We know about your secret messages to the Outer Moons. We know you've been in contact with the fugitive Luna and her band of rebels." Behind Alex, the female dragons working on the collapse site exchanged worried glances. They had volunteered to help despite the risk, trusting that his success would lead to their freedom. Now that trust seemed misplaced. "Those dragons aren't criminals," Alex said. "They're refugees who fled persecution. They are property of the Draconic Empire. Stolen goods that must be returned." Gold moved closer, using his size to intimidate. "And you are a thief who helped them avoid justice." The conversation was interrupted by a deep rumbling sound that seemed to come from everywhere. At once, the crystal formations in the tunnel walls began to glow brighter, and small pieces of loose rock fell from the ceiling. "What is that?" demanded Scorius, looking around nervously. Alex checked his scanner and smiled despite the tension. "That's the sound of 15 dragons digging their way to freedom." The trapped workers had been alive all along, sustained by an underground spring and emergency supplies that the female dragons had secretly cached throughout the mine system. But more importantly, they had discovered exactly what Ember had suspected: a massive cache of ancient dragon technology hidden in the deep chambers. "Impossible," Gold snarled. "Our surveys showed no life signs beyond the collapse." "Your surveys used traditional methods," Alex replied. "We used dragon mineral sensing combined with human sonar technology. The combination revealed tunnels your equipment couldn't detect." The rumbling grew louder, and suddenly a section of the tunnel wall cracked open. Claws appeared through the gap, followed by dragon snouts, and finally entire heads as the trapped workers broke through to freedom. But these dragons looked different than when they had disappeared 3 weeks ago. Their scales gleamed with an inner light, and they wore devices that looked like jewelry, but hummed with barely contained energy. The lead worker, a dragon named Copper, stepped through the gap carrying something that made Gold step backward in shock. It was a crystal formation unlike anything Alex had seen before, multifaceted and glowing with shifting colors that seemed to contain miniature stars. Ancient dragon writing covered its surface, script so old that even the council members couldn't read it. "The heart of the deep," whispered Copper, holding the artifact carefully. "We found the heart of the mountain, the power source that once drove our flying cities." Scorius moved forward, reaching out with obvious greed. "Give that to me immediately!" "No." The word came from Ember, who appeared at the tunnel entrance with her chains broken and hanging loose around her ankles. Tom stood beside her, along with several other young dragons Alex recognized from the audience at his challenge. "You have no authority here anymore," Gold roared. but his voice carried uncertainty rather than confidence. Ember smiled, and for the first time Alex saw the dragon she must have been before decades of oppression had broken her spirit. Actually, I do. While you were focused on stopping the human, you missed the real revolution happening in your own city. She gestured toward the tunnel entrance where dozens of dragons were gathering. Males and females stood together, no longer divided by the artificial barriers that had defined their society for centuries. Many wore the same type of energy-enhanced devices that the rescued workers carried. Your people are tired of your rule, Ember continued. They've seen what cooperation can achieve. They've learned that strength comes from unity, not domination. The standoff stretched taut as both sides faced each other across the tunnel. Alex could see that Scorius and Gold were calculating their odds, weighing their traditional authority against this unexpected uprising. The tension broke when a new sound filled the air, the deep, harmonious hum of dragon voices raised in an ancient song. The melody was hauntingly beautiful, carrying power that made the crystal formations throughout the mine resonate in sympathy. The Liberation Song, Copper explained to Alex. We haven't heard it sung openly for 300 years. It calls for all dragons to remember who they truly are. The song seemed to awaken something in the dragons around them. Even some of the guards began to lower their weapons, their expressions confused as if waking from a long sleep. But Scorius wasn't ready to surrender his power so easily. Guards! Arrest the human and all the females who have participated in this rebellion. Kill anyone who resists. The guards hesitated. The song had affected them too, reminding them of stories their grandmothers had told them about the time when dragons worked together instead of fighting each other. Your guards serve the people, not your greed, said a voice from above. Everyone looked up to see a dragon landing at the tunnel entrance. She was magnificent, with scales that shifted from deep blue to silver depending on the light. And she carried technology that was clearly more advanced than anything the planet possessed. Luna, Ember breathed, tears streaming down her face. Luna touched down gracefully and walked directly to her mother, ignoring the weapons pointed at her. Hello, Mother. I got your message. The reunion lasted only seconds before Luna turned. To face the council delegation. High Drake Lord Scorius, Counselor Gold, you are no longer welcome on this world. You dare challenge us? Gold bellowed. You are nothing but an escaped criminal. Luna smiled, and Alex saw where Ember had passed on her strength to her daughter. I am the elected leader of the Free Dragon Colony, representing 15,000 dragons who chose freedom over slavery. We have spent the last 15 years developing technology you cannot imagine, building a society you could never understand. She activated a device on her wrist, and the air around her shimmered. Suddenly, the tunnel was filled with dragons, their forms translucent but clearly visible. Holographic projections, Alex realized, showing the true size of Luna's forces. We have ships, weapons, and most importantly, we have dragons who remember what it means to be free, Luna continued. You can fight us and destroy everything, or you can step aside and let this world heal. Scorius looked around at the faces surrounding him. The guards were no longer following his orders. The workers were singing the Liberation Song with growing confidence. Even some of the council members he had brought with him were staring at the holographic dragons with obvious longing. This isn't over, he said finally, backing toward the tunnel entrance. The Empire will not fall to rebels and humans. The Empire already has fallen, Ember replied gently. You just haven't noticed yet. 6 months after the Crystal Mine rescue, Alex walked through the same market square where he had first witnessed the injustices of Dragon Society. Everything looked different now, though the buildings remained the same. Dragon children of both genders played together in the fountains, while their parents worked side by side in shops and stalls that hummed with new prosperity. The changes hadn't come easily. The weeks following Scorius's defeat had seen scattered resistance from traditionalists, dragons who couldn't accept the new reality. But the combination of Luna's advanced technology, Ember's wisdom, and the clear benefits of cooperation had gradually won over even the most stubborn opponents. "The morning reports, Chancellor," said Tom, approaching Alex with a data pad. The young dragon now served as liaison between the new dragon government and the human diplomatic mission. Alex accepted the pad and smiled at Tom's continued use of the honorary title. The dragons had insisted on making him an official advisor to their new council, though he preferred to think of himself simply as a friend helping neighbors. The reports showed remarkable progress. Crystal production had increased by 300% using the combination of female mineral sensing and ancient dragon technology. The weather prediction network, staffed entirely by female dragons, had prevented crop failures and saved dozens of lives during the storm season. Most importantly, the birth rate was climbing for the first time in centuries as dragons discovered they could create families based on love rather than breeding assignments. "Any word from the outer colonies?" Alex asked. "Luna's people are establishing trading posts throughout the system. They've already made contact with 6 other species who were waiting for dragon civilization to become stable enough for partnership." Tom paused. "They're particularly interested in human space-folding technology." Alex nodded. That had been the goal from the beginning, creating a dragon society that could become a true ally to humanity rather than simply a source of raw materials. They walked toward the Grand Assembly Hall, where the new Dragon Council met each day, to address the challenges of rebuilding their civilization. The building had been renamed and restructured, with equal seating for all members regardless of gender. The old hierarchy based on physical dominance had been replaced by a system that valued wisdom, creativity, and contribution to the common good. Inside the hall, Alex found Ember presiding over a discussion about expanding the education system. She wore the simple golden chain of the Chancellor, a position she had accepted reluctantly, but filled with remarkable skill. "The children are learning so quickly," she was saying to the assembled counselors. "Both male and female students show equal aptitude in engineering, crystal cultivation, and weather prediction. We should expand the advanced programs to accommodate their enthusiasm." Counselor Nova, the former military dragon who had disguised herself as male for years, raised her hand. "The pilot training program has similar results. Traditional assumptions about gender and ability are proving completely wrong." A few traditionalist dragons still grumbled at such statements, but they were vastly outnumbered by the progressives who had embraced the new way of thinking. The discussion was interrupted when Luna entered the hall carrying a device that made Alex's scanner look primitive. Her scales gleamed with health and confidence, and she moved with the easy authority of someone who had learned to lead through service rather than domination. "Mother, council members, we have visitors," Luna announced. She activated the device, and suddenly the hall was filled with holographic images from space above the planet. 3 massive ships hung in orbit, their design clearly human but modified with dragon crystal technology. "The Human Federation flagship Endeavor requests permission to land," Luna continued. "They want to formalize the alliance between our peoples and establish permanent trade relationships." Alex felt a surge of pride and satisfaction. When he had first arrived on Draconus Prime, the idea of dragons and humans working as equal partners had seemed impossible. Now it was becoming reality. "What do you think, Alex?" Ember asked. "Should we invite them down?" "That's not my decision to make any more," Alex replied. "You're the Chancellor. What do you think is best for your people?" Ember smiled, the same expression of wisdom and strength that had first convinced Alex she was worth saving. "I think it's time the galaxy met, the dragons we were always meant to be." The council voted unanimously to welcome the Federation delegation. As the meeting dispersed and dragons began preparing for the formal ceremony, Alex found himself standing alone with Ember on the hall's observation balcony. "Do you ever regret it?" Ember asked quietly. "Risking your career and your life for dragons you barely knew?" Alex looked out over the city, watching dragons of all ages and genders working together to build something better than what had come before. Children flew alongside their parents, learning skills that had been forbidden to half the population just months earlier. The crystal towers glowed with renewed energy, powered by technology that merged ancient dragon wisdom with modern innovation. "Never," he said finally. "I've seen what happens when people give up on each other. I've also seen what becomes possible when they choose to believe in something better." Ember nodded, her gaze following a group of young dragons who were practicing aerial formations together, males and females flying in perfect harmony. "The old dragons used to say that strength comes from standing above others, but you showed us that real strength comes from lifting others up." "I didn't show you anything you didn't already know," Alex replied. "I just helped you remember." A commotion from the plaza below caught their attention. Luna had landed in the center of the square with several other dragons, all carrying equipment that sparked with contained energy. They were setting up some kind of demonstration for the crowds that had gathered. "What's she doing now?" Alex asked with amusement. Luna had inherited her mother's wisdom, but also a tendency toward dramatic gestures. "Probably showing off the new weather control system," Ember said fondly. "She wants to create a light show for the Federation delegation's arrival." They watched as Luna coordinated with a team of female dragons who had been working on atmospheric manipulation. The sky above the city began to shift and change, clouds forming artistic patterns while maintaining perfect weather for the ceremony below. It was a display of power and beauty that would have been impossible under the old system. "Alex," Ember said as they watched the sky dance, "there's something I need to tell you. The Federation isn't just here for trade negotiations." Alex turned to look at her more carefully. "What do you mean?" "Luna's colony has been in contact with other worlds, other species that have been oppressed by their own traditional systems. Word is spreading about what happened here, about how cooperation and equality can transform a civilization." Alex felt a mix of pride and concern. "And?" "They want to learn. Dragons, humans, and others working together to help worlds that are ready for change." Ember's eyes gleamed with the same intensity Alex had first seen when she spoke about mineral sensing. "They're calling it the Liberation Alliance." The implications hit Alex immediately. What had started as a simple diplomatic mission to one world could become something much larger. A movement that spread across the galaxy, challenging oppressive systems wherever they existed. The Federation approved this? They more than approved it. They want you to lead the human component. Alex gripped the balcony railing as he processed this information. Leading diplomatic missions was one thing, but coordinating a galaxy-wide effort to promote social change was something entirely different. "I'm just one person, Ember. I'm not some legendary hero." "No," she agreed. "You're something better. You're someone who sees individuals instead of categories, someone who believes in potential instead of accepting limitations. That's exactly what this kind of work requires." Below them, Luna's weather display reached its climax as rainbow-colored lightning danced harmlessly through the clouds. The crowd cheered with delight, and Alex could see dragons pointing up at the sky with expressions of wonder and joy. "What about you?" Alex asked. "Will Draconus Prime be stable enough to spare its Chancellor for Galactic Adventures?" Ember laughed, a sound that still surprised Alex with its warmth. "I'm not going anywhere. This world needs steady leadership while it continues to grow. But Luna will be joining the Alliance, along with some of our best engineers and diplomats." "And Tom?" "Tom specifically requested assignment to your team. He says humans and dragons work well together, and he wants to see how other species approach these challenges." Alex thought about the young dragon who had risked everything to help rescue Ember and expose the truth about the crystal mine collapse. Tom had grown from an uncertain youth into a confident leader, proof that the new Dragon Society was producing individuals who could thrive in ways the old system never allowed. "When do we leave?" The Federation ships will depart in 3 days. Your first assignment is a world called Kepler-7, where an insectoid species has developed a rigid caste system that's stifling their technological development. Alex smiled. Another challenge. Another opportunity to prove that cooperation achieved more than domination. Any advice for dealing with insectoids? The same advice that applies to any species, Ember replied. Listen to the ones who aren't being heard. Question the systems that waste potential. And remember that every individual deserves the chance to become who they're meant to be. The conversation was interrupted by the arrival of the Federation. Ships, their hulls gleaming as they descended through Luna's artistic cloud formations. Alex watched them land and felt a familiar mixture of excitement and nervousness that always came before embarking on something important. Ready for another adventure? Ember asked, noticing his expression. Alex thought about the dragons below who were celebrating their freedom, about the young ones who would grow up never knowing the limitations that had once defined their society, about the future that had opened up because someone had been willing to say, "You come with me to a dragon in chains." "Yeah," he said, straightening his shoulders. "I think I am." As the Federation delegates began disembarking from their ships, Alex prepared to take on a responsibility larger than anything he had imagined when he first stepped foot on Draconus Prime. But he wasn't afraid. He had learned that the universe was full of potential waiting to be unleashed, and sometimes all it took was one person willing to stand up and say that things could be better. The revolution had begun with a single act of compassion. Now it was time to see how far that revolution could spread.